Welcome everyone that's here to the 2023 Nature Lecture Series. I'm here with Sharon Mann from the Wittenberry Land Trust. My name is Matthew Mace from Bloomfield Leisure Services. And we've got Ginny Apple, who is a Master Wildlife Conservationist for the Connecticut DEEP. If you guys have participated with us before, if you have a question, please feel free to go ahead and put it into the chat, and we will we'll ask those questions towards the end of the discussion, towards the end of the lecture. And if there's duplicates, we'll try to consolidate those in there. We do have another webinar coming up on Wednesday, February 1st, and that is going to be Furry Foxy Facts. And Ginny actually will be back for that webinar as well. And with that, I'll hand it over to Sharon with any announcements that she may have for the Wittenberry Land Trust.
Well, Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome. It's very exciting. This is our 4th year for the series, and we have a lot of wonderful animal lectures scheduled all the way through till April. And Ginny, we don't have to, you've found out about her. She's from the Department of Environmental and Energy Protection. That's where we have a lot of our speakers come from. They're very knowledgeable, and Ginny has wonderful stories to tell. So I'm going to just share my screen at the end. Do you want to do it at the end, Matt? Or do you?
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, we'll share our screen at the end and let you all know about what all the other topics are coming up that Ginny will be talking on, and others. And we're going to go now right into Ginny. Take it away, Ginny.
Okay, hello everybody and welcome. I'm always happy that people have curiosity about wildlife and our environment, and I'm very happy always to share. So this is a newer talk I created because these are 4 animals that a lot of people have curiosities about, and they all are uniquely adapted for their environment. So I just thought it would be a good talk. So I'm going to get my face off of here and let you look at these great animals, and I'll see you at the end. Thank you. So I call these the Fearsome Foursome, probably not because they're fearsome, but they are a foursome sort of. The porcupine kind of is, you know, an outlier, but I think you'll see why I included it. So collective senses, many nocturnal animals lack the high profile adaptations of the night specialists like bats and owls. Instead, they call on their collective senses of sight, smell, and hearing to make nighttime living work for them. Some of these nocturnal animals, like the raccoon here, are familiar to people, while others are rarely seen. The banded masked raccoon is a well-known nocturnal hunter. Featured in many cartoons, characterized a lot with that mask and that ringtail. Not only does it have excellent hearing, and which is typical of many nocturnal animals, it's keen to strange noises. It has excellent night vision, although it's colorblind. I always wonder how they figure out an animal's colorblind, but they do have scientific ways. Its tactile sense of feeling sets it apart from omnivores. However, the forepaws have just an exceptional sense of touch, and that helps them identify food items more than any other of their senses. They can go on to a sandy beach and just feel along, and they can find like different shelled animals just by using their touch. They have highly developed nerves. It is seen in the day, like other nocturnal animals spotted in daylight. They still do most of their hunting at night. It is not unusual for us to see raccoons in the daytime. It doesn't necessarily mean one animal we have that carries rabies more than the others. So raccoon, I always put the Latin name up for you. I did take 4 years of Latin, but I can't pronounce it very well, so I always write it for you to look at. The raccoon's scientific name there is Neo-Latin, and it translates to before dog washer. I have no idea what that means, couldn't find out, but anyway, the English word raccoon is an adaptation of a native Powhatan word meaning animal that scratches with its hands, and that's very appropriate. As again, they have some of the most dexterous hands in nature, as anybody who's had a garden cooler or garbage can broken into by one of them knows. North Americans were the first to note their unusual paws. Again, they use their hands and scratch looking for stuff and food. The Aztecs, when they named the raccoon, they named it Mapachiti, or one who takes everything in its hands. So today that word Mapache means raccoon in Spanish. Christopher Columbus is the first individual we know of to have written about the species. Based on fossil evidence from Russia and Bulgaria, the first known members of their family lived in Europe and about 25 million years ago. So it's a really old species. There are 6 raccoon species native to North and South America. The most recognizable is our raccoon, the common raccoon that lives in the US. Other varieties of the animals can be found farther south, often inhabiting tropical islands. So you see the hands there, the little look, we've all probably seen that. Size and weight, the adult raccoon they're a medium-sized mammal and the largest of the raccoon family. They can be 24 to 38 inches in length and weigh between 14 to 23 pounds. Of course, if they're eating your birdseed, they probably get a little fatter. It all depends upon their habitat and available food. The male raccoon, which is called a boar, is slightly larger than the female, and the female is referred to as a sow. Their young are called kits. In the wild, raccoon has a life expectancy of about 2 to 3 years, but in captivity, a raccoon can live up to 20 years. Unfortunately, as you know, you probably see a lot of dead raccoons in the road. They are very susceptible to roadkill, mostly crossing the road, not so much eating dead stuff on the road, but crossing the road. And that's true of many of our animals. So the mask of black fur that covers its eyes is the most characteristic and familiar feature of the raccoon, aside from its ringed tail. One idea for the dark fur is that it helps reduce glare and enhance its nocturnal vision. Thanks to these black markings that fall across their eyes, they've been typecast as a thief or a trickster figure in stories for centuries. But their famous masks, as I said, do more than make them look like adorable outlaws. They do help their vision and help them see clearly. They kind of work like the black that athletes put under their eyes to prevent the glare from the lights above. The dark, again, absorbs incoming light and reduces that glare, which would otherwise it would bounce into their eyes and obstruct their vision. So again, as I said, these animals are uniquely adapted to their habitat. At night, when they're most active, less peripheral light makes it easier for them to perceive contrast and focus on their subjects, which is essential for seeing in the dark for animals. The species has grayish brown fur. Almost 90% of it is very dense underfur, and that helps insulate the raccoon against the cold. 5 to 8 light and dark rings alternate on its tail. If you're my age, you probably had the coonskin cap, Davy Crockett or Daniel Boone. Because its hind legs are longer than its front legs, a raccoon often appears hunched when they walk or run. The 5 toes on a raccoon's front paws are very dexterous, as we said. They function as 5 little fingers. They can grasp and manipulate food as they find it in the wild, and other objects, including doorknobs, jars, and latches, and birdseed feeders. A raccoon's most heightened sense, again, as I said, is their sense of touch. You can see the little paw down there. Those front paws increases underwater, in fact. When able, a raccoon will examine objects in water. Their front and rear paws, as you can see, do resemble a human hand. They have 5 slender finger-like toes that helps them easily manipulate food and objects. Again, while most animals use sight, sound, or smell to hunt, their sense of touch is their most acute sense. So when they douse their food quite a bit, and humans, we look like they're washing their food, but they're really wetting their paws to stimulate their nerve endings. So pretty interesting little things with the raccoon. I find them, you know, all that very interesting. This is a raccoon that came to my door last winter. I don't put any bird feed out, but this one had been chowing down at my neighbors. I'm kind of remote, but I do have a few neighbors. So it saw the light in my window, my door window, and thought, oh, let's go get some food. So that's what this raccoon was looking for, but it got nothing. The raccoon is an omnivore, and they're an opportunistic eater. Their diet is determined heavily by their environment. So once again, if there's garbage, bird seed, that's easy pickings. They're going to eat that. Other foods they eat include fruits, plants, nuts, berries, insects. They will eat mice, frogs, eggs, and crayfish. In urban environments, they'll go into garbage and sift garbage for food. But the majority of its diet consists of invertebrates and plant foods. I've seen a raccoon get caught in a dumpster and actually take a 2x4 and place it on the side of the dumpster and climb out. So they're not stupid animals. They do play an important role in our ecosystem, as all these animals do. They're beneficial to humans because they feed on many pest species, such as insects, and on carrion or dead stuff, assisting in eliminating decomposing animal matter. They're also hunted and trapped for food and for their pelts, although the price of most pelts now are down quite a bit. Breeding and social structure. The animal's nocturnal, as I said, mostly foraging and feeding at night. Though previously thought to be solitary, there's now evidence that the species congregates in gender-specific groups. Mating season occurs generally any time between January and June. Most females begin reproducing around the age of 1. If they only live to 3, I guess that's pretty vital for the species. They have a 65-day gestation period, and they give birth to 2 to 5 kids, usually in the spring. A mother usually separates from other raccoons to raise her young alone. The male does not participate in raising the kits. The black mask is already visible when the kits are born, and they stay in the den with their mother till they're about 8 to 10 weeks old. And then they'll come out of the den and run around, but they will stay with the mother until they're about 13 to 14 months old. In the winter, it does not hibernate, but if the weather's severe, it might sleep in its den for weeks, and it will have things stored up, maybe acorns in there. They can run at speeds up to 15 miles per hour, so probably about the speed most of us can run at the most. They can swim. Most animals can swim. It could stay in the water for hours if it needed to. They have a variety of vocalizations, from hisses, whistles, screams, growls, and snarls. And there was a series of studies in the mid to late 20th century that show a raccoon can remember solutions to tasks for different tasks you give them for up to 3 years. So, you know, that's pretty incredible. So they are, like these other species, a pretty smart critter. But if you give raccoons a puzzle, as long as there's food involved, they'll usually find a way to solve it. More recently, scientists tasked a group of raccoons with an Aesop's fable test. The story, which you know, tells of a crow dropping stones into a pitcher to get its water level to rise. So what the researchers did, they placed raccoons in a room with a cylinder of water with marshmallows floating on the surface and stones scattered around it. To reach the snacks, the raccoons first had to make the water higher by depositing the stones. After they were shown what to do, 2 out of 8 raccoons copied the behavior, while a third took an unexpected approach to the problem and toppled the whole thing over. So they do have a little ingenuity there. I'm going to play you a few raccoon sounds here, just so you can hear. I'm sure you've heard most of these, but I'll play them anyway. That's just their kind of contented chitter chatter. And those are younger ones chitter chattering, and oh, that's a repeat. Sorry. And then here I think is a group squabbling, which I'm sure most of you heard. Hold on, no, the group. Hold on, the bar is in my way here. So this is the group squabbling. It's a lot of little noises, but if they get mad, they will growl. Just to show you, they can be. Wait a minute, I get it. It's not advanced. Just so you can see, they can be out in the daytime. This is in my backyard. I'm surrounded on 3 sides by People's State Forest. And as you can see, this raccoon's just going along its way, just happily walking along in the sunshine. So they, again, as I said, raccoons do act as a reservoir for rabies in the United States. The majority of rabies cases in the U.S. are in wildlife, with raccoon cases predominating. In the U.S., 90% of all rabies cases occur in wildlife. So that's something to know. Also, another thing to know about feeding birds, it's good to keep the ground clear, because otherwise you're going to attract, particularly in the summer when rabies is more prevalent, you know, raccoons and stuff that could or could not be rabid. So, but raccoons are among the rare species that actually have benefited from the spread of humans. The populations in North America have skyrocketed in the past several decades, despite the destruction of much of the animal's natural environment. Since they're so adaptable to thrive in rural, urban, and suburban environments, they eat almost anything. You know, there's almost nothing they won't eat. They're kind of like goats. Some raccoons do their foraging in human populous areas and then retreat into the woods during the day to sleep. Others will make buildings, both abandoned and occupied their homes. So, so here's a picture I had of a raccoon with a fox. A lot of animals choose their prey. They don't want to tussle with something that might hurt them. And they do know that if that raccoon, there might be a couple other raccoons in that holly bush. So the fox thought, no, I think I'll go on along. I can find some smaller prey, you know, and not get hurt. So you will see them also coexisting with other animals. You can see this picture with a skunk. So generally speaking, they just kind of live and let live on the things that are near their size. And as I said, a lot of the predators will pass on by because they don't want to get injured. So the North American porcupine, I love to watch the porcupines. They're probably not so as far as Bloomfield. I'm not saying you wouldn't see them, but most of our porcupines are in the northwest corner of Connecticut. They might be considered a prickly bunch, but they're pretty cute and uniquely adapted to their environments once you learn about them. It's a type of rodent. It's native to parts of Asia, Africa, North and South America, and Italy. They live in more temperate climates, and they're characterized obviously by their spikes or quills. Their name makes reference to this feature. Porcupine is derived from Old French porc de spine, meaning spiked pig. There's 33 species of porcupine. They can be gray, brown, rarely white, although there have been albino porcupines. They have tails that measure up to 8 to 10 inches, and their body's always kind of round, and they can weigh 12 to 60 pounds. Now that's worldwide. They're mostly slow moving, but our American porcupine is an agile climber. Again, they're the 3rd largest rodents in the world and the 2nd largest in North America to the beaver. Our porcupines can be up 11 to 20 pounds. The females are smaller, 2 to 3 feet in length, and their tail can be 6 to 12 inches long. Again, they're very healthy. They're very distinguished by their quills. They appear on the whole dark brown to black. They have dorsal guard hairs that contain bands of yellow. The quills, as you see, can extend from head to tail on their dorsal surface. They have no quills on their face or their belly, or their paws, so they're vulnerable in those spots. Oops, that's a blank. Okay, so this is a picture just for reference. There are two basic types of porcupines, the so-called Old World, which is this porcupine here, and New World varieties, characterized by the hemisphere in which they are native. These branches of the porcupine family are not closely related. Their quills are not inherited from a common ancestor, but rather an example of convergent evolution, meaning both groups develop the trait independently. There are a few other differences. Old World porcupines prefer rocky areas and higher elevations. New World porcupines, smaller, live in lower elevations. They're excellent climbers and they prefer woodlands, although a lot of our porcupines will den up in rock outcroppings, which you know we have a lot of those. Mostly Old World porcupines are terrestrial, meaning they live on the ground, and they are quite large. This porcupine here can weigh up to as much as 60 pounds. So pretty big. You wouldn't want that coming at you with its quills, I don't think. So, New World porcupines are much smaller, and many varieties live in trees, as is the case with the species we have here in Connecticut. This is one that was in a tree this autumn that I got a picture of. I would say this is probably a year old. One exception, there is a common porcupine that is in Alaska, northern Canada, and Oregon. It is terrestrial and can weigh up to 40 pounds. And when it stretches out, it can be up to 4 feet long, including the tail, so pretty big. Two branches of porcupines also differ in that Old World porcupines have quills that are grouped in bunches, while our porcupines have individually attached quills. Unlike what Disney makes you to believe, they cannot throw their quills. That's a common misconception, but they cannot do that. The quills only come out when something touches them. Different species have developed similar but different types of quills. Again, the Old Worlds have grouped in clusters. Our 12 New World species, like the common porcupine, have quills that are attached singly. They are made of keratin, like our fingernails. They do have a barb on the end, kind of like a fish hook, so it makes it a little hard to get them out. Again, there are no quills on their face, their belly, and their feet, which are points of attack for predators. So these are modified hair shafts that evolved as a defense against predators. While the porcupine does share this with the hedgehog, the two animals are not to be confused. Unlike the porcupine, the hedgehog is not a rodent, but an insectivore. So they are a little different. I was happy when I was hiking in Scotland one night. I was driving really late on the road, which I tend to do, which is probably not a good thing. Came around a corner on the single track road, and there was a hedgehog in the middle, hedgehog in the middle of the road. So I got out to shoo it on, but they're kind of small, but really cute. I know people over here, some of them have as pets. So porcupines typically are, docile animals. They'll raise their quills in self-defense when they feel threatened. They first do it by kind of turning their body around and kind of giving a little threat. Again, they can't throw those quills. They use those large teeth to satisfy their healthy appetite for wood, and they get orange teeth like the beavers from the Cambium that they eat. They eat natural bark and stems, and they've been known to invade campgrounds and chew on canoe paddles when those used to be wood. Some people would come out in the morning and find their paddles chewed. Again, they also eat fruit, leaves, and springtime buds. In the spring, oftentimes you'll see them on different types of sumacs as well. They have very poor vision, but a very good sense of smell. Besides humans being predators, mostly with cars, the fisher and bobcat are their biggest predator in New England. Out west, the cougar can make pretty short work of a porcupine. The fisher is very vicious in hunting a porcupine. What they'll do is they'll chase it out. If it's in the tree, they'll try to get it out of the tree, and they'll circle around it. And each time it comes to the porcupine's face, it'll take a little bite and keep circling bite, circling bite until the porcupine is weakened, and then it turns it over, flips it over, and eats it from the belly. So pretty brutal, but pretty good machine for eating. So these are just various porcupines in various phases there. You can see those little claws they have there and the quills. Though equipped with their own defensive, both the skunk and the porcupine do prefer nighttime for foraging. The quill, also known as the quill pig, the porcupine can have up to 30,000 quills. I always laugh because, you know, they tell you when I give my bald eagle talk, the number is 7,200 feathers. And I'm like, well, who counts these things? Or do they get, you know, 4 dead eagles and count all the feathers? And how in the world do they count these quills? Because I can tell you, if you pick up a quill, it's pretty sharp and you have to be very careful. Again, their quills are made of keratin, like our fingernails. But there are hardened hairs with those barbed tips. They do vary in length. The ones on the back are longer, and the shortest ones are around their face. Because they're hollow, guess what? They help the porcupine float, so that helps make them unexpectedly good swimmers. Again, another adaptation that's really good. So they don't hibernate. They're active year-round. Their hollow quills and woolly underfur keep them warm. The quills insulate the porcupine, kind of like a polar bear's fur. And again, it helps it swim. You can kind of tell a porcupine's mood by the position of the quills. When it's relaxed and unafraid, the quills lie flat, sort of like this. These are semi-flat, hidden under a layer of those long guard hairs. If it's disturbed or threatened in any way, the quills will stand erect and the porcupine is ready for battle. The slightest touch on a single quill or guard hair brings them erect and makes the critter really a living pincushion. So each of the quill and a porcupine is under complete muscle control and can be raised or lowered instantly. Baby porcupines are called porcupets. I don't know who made that word up, but anyway, they are born with quills. They harden within an hour of their birth. So there's only one porcupet per year, you know, per nesting season. So, you know, it's not like rabbits and stuff who have a lot of, you know, babies or mice. They only have one. So, you know, it's hoped that they survive each year. Native Americans, tribes use quills as tools and decorations. They made baskets, clothing, any item decorated with beads. That basket there is made totally pretty much out of porcupine quills, except for the outer part, you know, that you can see is straw. The bottom left is a seat, a chair seat made out of porcupine quills. I guess they tuck them in pretty good so you don't get poked by them. But anyway, Native Americans only used as much of an animal that they needed to use. So again, here's you see, this one is in no thread. It's just kind of hanging out, and the quills, even though they look like they're up, they're really not. They are a pretty solitary animal, but they will den with other porcupines in winter if it's particularly cold. It does make its den in caves, decaying logs, hollow trees. Oftentimes, when you see a tree that has a big opening at the bottom, if you look around and see some kind of scat, you know, there might be a porcupine in there. So don't stick your hand up there. I mean, it could be a flying squirrel, but I wouldn't want to take that chance. So it is an excellent tree climber, spends a lot of its time in trees. It's also very vocal, although kind of quiet vocal, and it moans, it grunts, it coughs, it wails, it whines and shrieks. So here you can see one in a cave, kind of zoomed in. I was kind of far away when I took that photo, but I wanted to depict. And sometimes those porcupines might be in a cave that's not too far away from a bobcat. So somehow they coexist in their dens. So here, I think, so here you can see to the right, as I was saying, I was doing a tracking, and to the left is how they'll eat away at a tree bark, but on the right, that is a porcupine den. You could just barely see it in there, but we put the scat on a leaf just so you could see it, and the tracking people made us have to identify it. I managed to get that one. So this year I was very lucky to come upon a porcupine mother feeding her porcupine. This was at night. I was kind of far away, and so you can see it's not sharp, but you can see that porcupine is feeding there, and I felt very lucky to witness that. Didn't stay long because I didn't want to disturb them. Again, they only breed once a year. Males will compete for different females. The males will breed with a number of females, but only when the females are willing. Same with bears, you know, the female has to give in. Breeding occurs in October, November. Gestation is pretty long, 210 days. Again, she will give birth to a single offspring. They weigh about 14 to 18 ounces. They'll be nursed for 125 days, and then they're on their own at about 5 months of age. But they're not sexually mature until 25 months for females and 29 months for males. This particular little porcupine kept staying in a part. I'm on kind of a non-busy road, but it kept staying on that road and coming close to the road. Now in the spring, you'll see a lot of animals, deer, porcupine, turkey. They all come to the edge of the road and they're licking up the salt that's been left there by cars. But this was already August, and this little one, I don't know what the heck, maybe it's eating clover, but I kept trying to chase it away from the road, and it came coming back, so I named it Boomerang. But anyway, it disappeared at one point, so I hope it went on to a nice and healthy life. So again, the young porcupine is a 1 pound miniature version of its parents. You can see it's got a tick on its nose right there. This is the one I named Boomerang. Males and females look alike. The eyes and ears are functional when they're young. It has typical rodent incisors with a few cheek teeth. It's covered in pretty dark hair at the beginning, and well-developed quills, as I said, harden within less than an hour. They instinctively exhibit themselves backside first with a prickly defense posture minutes after they're born, and they'll lash their tail with as much exuberance as an adult when threatened. So pretty cool critters. So here's one more picture of little Boomerang and poison ivy. So anyway, I'm going to try to get, now we have a video here, if I can get it going. You see, it's quite cold there in Ohio. They're known to be quiet and elusive creatures, but they are quite vocal. They have these little noises they make. They're most vocal during mating season or when agitated or under a threat. This porcupine has taken up residence in my friend's backyard, and she's been watching it for several weeks. Her backyard is like a farm, you know, it's not like a typical backyard. This one, I'm sorry, is in Canada, so I'm very grateful that she shares this with me, and doesn't really want our name used, but I'm grateful she lets me use the video. So watch closely. So that raccoon came on that porcupine in its den, and it wanted nothing to do with that. So again, here's one other little sound they make. And typically they're doing that as they're going about their business, chewing or whatever. So just little grunts. So here's their teeth. They're very sharp incisor. They never stop growing, so their constant chewing on wood helps keep them shorter. Same with a beaver. They have very sharp claws for climbing trees. And again, their quills do have barbs on them that have been. We have done necropsies on bobcat that have had porcupine quills embedded in them. So there's more to me than meets the nose. Striped skunks are similar in size to domestic cats. They weigh from 6 to 14 pounds. They have pointed snouts. They have kind of small, as you see, triangular heads with a white stripe and nose on the forehead. Sometimes the stripe along their back can be varied in where it falls. Typically, their coat is black with the white stripes. that split usually from around their body. But again, these sometimes can be a little different. Their white stripes are as unique as our fingerprints, so they do vary for each individual skunk. As you know, the tails of skunks are wide, long, and bushy, can be all black or have varying amounts of white. They have very short legs, so when they walk, they appear to waddle, like the porcupine as well. And they're very poor climbers. They have strong forefeet and long nails, though, which make them excellent diggers. So that's about the noise most of the noise they make. So here again, you can see there's the Latin name. I could probably make a stab at that one, but there you go. Breeding season usually for skunks occur February through March, and that's typical of a lot of our fur-bearing animals. In late April to early June, the female will start making a den and give birth to 2 to 10 kits. They are blind and helpless when they're born. If disturbed, the females will move their kits to a new den. Their kits do not leave the den until they are almost 6 to 8 weeks old. And when they do leave, they will follow their mother in search of food. And she will have alternate dens set up until they're independent between 2 and 5 months. It's kind of an individual thing with each one. Again, the average lifespan of a skunk is 2 to 3 years. That you get a lot of dead skunk in the middle of the road. Remember that song? Unfortunately, if I do see a dead skunk in the middle of the road, I close my air vents immediately, and then you won't have that aroma follow you for a while. They can live up to 15 years, in captivity. During the summer months, they sleep in retreats above ground. They'll take shaded areas and tall grass, under shrubs and thickets, or under decks and buildings. They don't have a lot of fidelity to their above ground retreats, but they will revisit them from time to time. They are not true hibernators. If the temperatures are above 30, they'll be active, out foraging for food. So dog owners should be aware on unusually warm winter nights. They'll be out stretching their legs and searching for food. But if temperatures are below freezing, they will go under, and conserve their energy, which is true of a lot of smaller animals. The skunk does carry its own lethal weapon, a stink that many dogs learn to avoid, and also predators. Their sulfuric spray has a range of up to 10 feet, and its odor can be detected 1.5 miles away. Pretty good. They're pretty easygoing animals, though, unless they're provoked. But they can afford to be, I say, because they're equipped with that formidable defense mechanism. They have 2 musk glands that have nipples under their tails. These glands hold enough stinky skunk musk for 5 to 6 sprays. So if they spray once, you better go away, because they can spray a few more times. Their musk, they can spray at about 10 to 15 feet, but the mist of it can reach up to 30 feet or more. So it does reek. It can sting the eyes. It might blind a victim temporarily and can induce nausea. And again, it may cling to whatever it's sprayed for many days. So you can see why a lot of animals not like it. They have several different sulfur-containing compounds that give that musk its powerful stench. A threatened skunk will chatter its teeth and start turning its back to the threat. So if you see it turn around, you better make haste. You can run from a skunk. Although this winter I learned, when I went home to Texas, that you can't, that an armadillo chases you. I had an armadillo chase me and I couldn't figure it out. And then I read about them and found that if they're digging in the ground and all of a sudden they perceive a threat, they will run no matter if it's running right by what they think is dangerous to get to their den. So I guess that's what it was doing. I just happened to be in the way. But anyway, a threatened skunk will turn around before it sprays. So if your best bet is to back very slowly and quietly away, don't startle skunks. They do have very poor eyesight, but they do have an excellent sense of smell. Again, like I said, most of these animals do. They're omnivorous, which means they eat both plant and animal material. They do change their diets with the seasons. They will eat insects, larvae, earthworms, grubs, lizards, frogs, snakes, birds, and moles and eggs. But commonly they'll eat berries, roots, leaves, grasses, fungi, and nuts. So, you know, they're kind of a generalist in what they eat. Like many other wild animals, they do thrive in suburban and urban areas. If you want to make your property less attractive to skunks and avoid any problems, try these things. You want to secure your garbage. That's true with most animals. They will raid open trash materials and compost piles. So you want to secure your garbage with tight-fitting lids, keep them in secure buildings when possible. Take out trash in the morning at pickup. Keep compost piles in containers. Keep bird areas clean underneath. And use feeders designed to keep seed off the ground. That's very important thing that people don't do and don't realize, and it's healthier even for all the birds. So I always like to include a little literature when I give talks. Ernest Thompson Seton, he was a hunter and an observer of animals. He was an English-born Canadian author, wildlife artist, and one of the founding pioneers of the Boy Scouts in 1910. His famous book was Wild Animals I Have Known, and also Lives of Game Animals. He was a naturalist. He did observe, and he did start the realistic wild animal fiction. So he would kind of write, characterize, you know, characters of animals, which another famous naturalist, John Burroughs, published an essay in the Atlantic Monthly and called it Real and Sham Natural History. He blamed Seton's collection of stories for founding the sentimental animal story genre, which we know Disney picked up from. He felt it featured fabricated events of wild animal behaviors, and he amended the title to Wild Animals I Alone Have Known. But anyway, Seton was a naturalist. He did observe animals, and I like this particular story that I want to share with you. He was also an artist. A lot of times when he lived out west, he would go to a patch of dirt at night and he would rake it clean because he wanted to see what had passed through. Of this practice, he said, of course, there were many blank nights, or others the happenings were trifling. Some, however, were full of reward. One night I was aroused by a strong smell of skunk, followed by strange muffled sounds that soon died away. So if you look at this illustration, at A, a skunk had come on the scene. At B, he was wandering about when a hungry bobcat appeared. At C, noting the promise of something to kill for food, the bobcat came on. At D, the skunk, observing the intruder, let him know, you better let me alone. And not wishing to make trouble, the bobcat moved off towards E. So you can see like the little bobcat saying, I don't think I'm going to take this skunk on. I just kind of thought that was fun. And I like to share literature sometimes. So now we'll move on to the possum, or the opossum. It's called the Virginia opossum. I should have put Virginia there. That's my real name. Anyway, it's the only marsupial living in North America. And of course, they're one of the oddest looking, slowest moving mammals around, which all of these animals are. The raccoons probably would win the foot race. Possums have been around for 70 million years. That's a real long time. So their ancestors were there to commiserate with the dinosaurs. And though their species have been around a long time, they do live very short lives. Typically, again, 2 to 3 years. That's what the fearsome foursome has in common, thanks to predators like dogs, cats, and people. Their reproduction rate does make up for this. They have only a 12-day gestation period, and they'll have large litters of 5 to 13. They're more intelligent than your dog or cat, and possibly as smart as a pig, which is really smart. When they were first observed and recorded during the 1600s, John Smith said that the animal, quote, hath an head like a swine, tail like a rat, of the bigness of a cat. So its name was derived from an expression for white dog beast in the Virginia Algonquin language. So pretty interesting little character here. So you can check those feet out. North America, again, they're our only marsupial. Wakes at twilight. Pretty much, you won't see them in the day too often. It begins its search. It eats fruit, roots, insects, small mammals, and anything it can find if things are scarce. It doesn't have many defenses other than playing dead and the most teeth of any mammal. It has 50 teeth. So it does derive protective advantage from dark. When you catch a sight of a possum in your car lights, you can think, that is one ugly little animal, but what they lack in looks, they do make up in originality. They're America's only marsupial who carries their babies in a pouch. They're a southern species, proper name Virginia opossum, that's adapted to New England winters. And they're, again, one of the oldest species of mammal around, having waddled past those dinosaurs. They are opportunistic omnivores. They will eat grubs and insects, which means they are good for your garden, even mice. They do work over the whole environment like little vacuum cleaners. They do gain a survival advantage from their high reproductive rate, as do like mice and bunnies, stuff like that. Again, they have those large teeth. They're about the size of a house cat. Their average male could weigh around 5.5 pounds, adult females about 4 pounds. They have long, dense body fur, even though when you look at them from a distance, we always think they're bare and have no hair. They do have this grayish white hair. In the southeast, they're a little darker. Their face is white. They have a pointed pink snout and whiskers. Again, they are not afraid to use those 50 teeth when they're scared or angry. It's called, hence the phrase, grinning like a possum. Their tail is a foot long, has very little hair on it. It's prehensile, which means it can be used to grasp onto objects such as tree limbs. It can't really hang on tree limbs very long, but it could if it has to. It generally uses that for balance. Don't tick me off, don't tick me or I'll off you. Indeed, some of their other traits are this. They do groom themselves fastidiously like cats. So if they find a tick, they lick it off and swallow it. It's been found through research that they devour an average of 5,000 ticks a year. I don't know how they came to that, but somehow they figured that out. So they're kind of a folk hero in America because they do devour those Lyme bacteria carrying black leg ticks, which make the mistake of hitching a ride on the possum's low-slung body. The ticks can pick up what's called Borrelia burgdorferi. It's a Lyme disease bacteria and infect other animals like your dog or horse. But most of the time, since the possums are great groomers, they take care of those ticks. So they're good to have around. So here's a mama with her babies. Again, they breed in midwinter. Again, there's very short gestation, 12 days. The young will climb into the pouch once they're born, and they will the mother will suckle and shelter those newborn for almost 70 days. Sometimes you'll see them with their heads outside. They're fed milk in that warm, cozy environment of the pouch. If you see, excuse me, a roadkill possum, it's good to get out and check because oftentimes the babies survive. And there's been a lot of possums rescued from roadkill mother. The young are less than a pound, like less than 1.5 grams, hairless and pink. They're called joeys. Excuse me, they're sexually mature at 6 months, and the possums will mate twice a year. And litters generally February and July. The young are completely weaned at 100 days after they enter the mother's pouch. Major causes of mortality are predators such as coyotes, dogs, bobcats, and of course, I have to always say us because I think we all drive too fast, especially at night. So here's a possum cleaning ticks off a deer. They become a folk hero because they eat all those ticks. And as you see, sometimes they'll eat them off other animals. I wanted to show you this is kind of interesting. When we were doing the bobcat study, and a lot of it did take place in Bloomfield, sometimes you would catch non-target species, and the biologist would answer the call 24 hours. They had cameras on the traps, and if anything was caught, they'd go right out immediately. And with something like a possum, they couldn't even wait hours. They had to go because, you know, in the winter, the possum doesn't have much defense. So it is a museum exhibit of strange and disjointed features. It has all those teeth. It is resistant to rabies and most toxins such as snake bites. Pity the poor rattler, copperhead, or water moccasin who bites a possum, because the possum will turn that table and eat the snake. They have a low body temperature, which gives them a great immune system and makes them resistant to most viruses. As you can see those feet. They have pretty long claws. So they do have several defense mechanisms. If they feel threatened, they'll growl, they'll belch, and they'll urinate. Their most famous defense is playing possum, similar to playing dead. But the possum is not pretending. It's an involuntary thing that happens. A lot like feigning that causes it to seize up. Before they do that, they'll open that wide mouth and show all those teeth. And then when in this state, when they fall over, they will foam at the mouth, produce foul-smelling fluids from anal glands to mimic sickness. And once they're catatonic, they can stay like that for 4 hours. And it's an effective deterrent against predators that typically avoid carrion. So I'm going to show you this next video. It's pretty cool. I want you to watch this bobcat and what he does and what the possum does. Oh, wait, sorry. I hope this works. Sorry. Let's see. I guess I got to hit that little play. Hold on. No. Sorry, that one. I just put that one in today and it didn't open up. So let me try one more time. All right. Well, anyway, that showed a possum. It came to me and it wouldn't open up on here. It shows a bobcat going up to a possum. He takes a bite of the possum. The possum falls down immediately stiff and the bobcat goes away. So I'm sorry that didn't show. Not sure why, because it showed on my screen. So apologies. As I said, this is the second time I've done this talk, so and I'm not real technical. So anyway, I wanted to show you this photo because this is a biologist who went out when they caught a possum in the trap in the middle of last winter. You know, it's like 20-something degrees. They were there within, you know, probably 30 minutes. And I want you to see the care with which the biologists take. Melissa is handling the possum, making sure there's no, you know, wounds on its paws or anything from the trap, you know, taking good care. I was able to get this photo. I didn't have spotlights, but they have very strong headlamps, so it gave me natural spotlight. But the biologists do care a lot about the animals that they are studying, and they take great care trying to ensure that they're safe. So just like humans and other creatures, it's possible for opossums to carry diseases. They can have leptospirosis, tuberculosis, relapsing fever, tularemia, spotted fever, all kinds of stuff. But the one that's most known is EPM, which is the equine protozoal myeloencephalitis, known as EPM. It's a neurologic disease that horses get from eating infected possum feces that makes the horse atrophy. Eventually they could die. Mostly it's from eating grain on the ground, the horse eating grain on the ground that might have feces. It could also be of the skunk or the raccoon or the armadillo. So probably keep grain in sealed bins and control possum populations around your barn. You can have a heart trap and just relocate them. So anyway, they carry probably far fewer zoonotic diseases than other critters, and they probably make up with it by getting rid of so many ticks and venomous critters like this. So the most amazing thing about it is that they are immune to snake venom, and they actually do kill and eat snakes, most even venomous ones like rattlesnakes, copperheads, and cottonmouth water moccasins, which we have all of those where I grew up in Texas. Peptide in the possum's blood has been found to be an effective and inexpensive anti-venom against bites from the western diamondback rattlesnake in the US and the Russell viper in India. So they do have some good features. So they are often misunderstood, and in general, in most cases, they're great creatures to have around. They're pretty docile. They're not going to threaten pets. They don't carry disease that often, and they do help keep pest population under control. So kind of good to have them around in most cases. So here you see the three of them walking along, the raccoon, the porcupine, and the skunk, not caring about each other. Here again, you can see them all together. So they are pretty interesting critters. We're almost done here. Another famous naturalist, Aldo Leopold, each year after the midwinter blizzards, there comes a night of thaw. When the tinkle of dripping water is heard in the land, it brings strange stirrings, not only to creatures abed for the night, but some to who have been asleep for the winter. His track marks one of the earliest datable events in that cycle of beginnings and ceasings, which we call a year. During 3 seasons of the year, many raccoons are aware of many gardeners are aware of the skunks, the possums, the raccoons, not so much the porcupines probably, that wander through their yards from dusk until dawn. You might see prints in dark soil, damp soil, that shows a midnight snack run. All of these critters take advantage of a lovely landscape that produces nuts, berries, and fruits. So I say plant a lot of native plants, and then you'll have a lot of flowers if you have a lot of plants. But they will eat the fallout from a bird feeder. These 3 particularly will be delighted to get into unsecured garbage containers or pet food. The raccoon and skunk will root around in your lawn in the spring and fall, looking for earthworms and grubs. All 3 are classified as omnivores, and they will eat whatever comes their way to whatever they can capture. If you don't want them around, make a lot of noise, close up your food. I say you can get a bear scare can, which is a metal coffee can, and put coins in it and shake it. That scares most things off. So let's see. So here in winter is a great time. I love to go out right after snow, even at night, and see what critters have been in the snow. It's a great activity to do with kids, but even adults. What does happen to these critters during the winter? None of these hibernate or migrate to a better climate. None of them really stockpile much food in preparation for the winter like squirrels. So it can be a difficult place if it's a severe winter. Raccoons, they're best suited to surviving in a winter. They'll be in hollow trees, woodchuck burrows, abandoned buildings, and rock crevasses. They may be alone, or a female may be with her current almost fully grown babies. If the weather's bad, they'll just stay in their dens and kind of sleep lightly. All these animals have to always be kind of aware of predators. When the weather improves, they'll look for whatever they can find to eat. Skunks build dens in almost the same areas, but they don't climb trees. During cold snaps and harsh weather, they'll stay in their dens. With their gentle nature, they might den with a group of a dozen or more. This makes surviving easier because they can share the heat. They can lower their body temperature about 10 degrees for short periods of time, but this doesn't give them a real edge in winter survival. If the snow is deep and there's a lack of food, almost 50% of them can die. But the average lifespan for a skunk is a little better than the other 3 that could live up to 4 years in the wild. So they have a little better chance, but not a lot. Possums have the most difficult winters of all. They rarely share a nest with other possums. They'll spend winter in dens like abandoned woodchuck burrows, hollow trees, and brush piles. I always say when you cut brush or your trees fall down, make a wildlife brush pile in your back property. It gives a lot of these things, these little critters, places to live. Even though they may not be the smartest animal, they're smart enough to line their dens with dry grass and leaves. They'll transport it by holding it in their mouths or grasping a bundle with their tails. Pretty cool. But they will switch nests for several times a week. We're not sure why. Their hairless ears and tails can get frostbitten. It's unusual to see a possum with the tip on its tail because of frostbite. They will rest in the dens. Obviously, areas under bird feeders or local diner for a number of animals, including possums. Their lifespan is less than 2 years. This is incredible that it's lasted as long as it has since prehistoric times. The porcupine during the winter also does not hibernate. It doesn't move far. It feeds within about 100 yards of its den. During snow or rain, it'll stay in the den. Or if it's outside feeding at the time, it will hunch in a tree, even during sub-zero weather until the rain or snow stops. If it's a dry winter, it will feed anytime, day or night, just to get all filled up. But during the rest of the year, it's pretty much nocturnal despite the weather. In summer, it will range farther from its den. It'll go about 1.5 miles away. These daily movements within their home range, there also may be different seasonal movements. In mountainous country, they will come down during the winter along well-defined routes by debarked trees. And in the spring, they would return up the mountainside to, their regular habitat. So here are their tracks. A is the possum, in case you didn't guess. It has 5 toes, wide and oddly shaped feet. The hind foot has very large opposable thumb-like toe used to grab branches. Looking at the tracks, the front print nestles in a V between the thumb and forefinger of the hind print. So pretty easily told, these 3, I think. The raccoon has 5 toes, that's V. And the print of its front foot looks like a small human hand, while the print of its hind foot is like a small human footprint. The hind foot is about 1 inch larger than the front. And if the claw marks are visible at all, they're small. C would be the skunk. Sometimes it looks a little like a small bear. They have a 5-toed front and hind feet. They're similar in size, but the front feet have longer nails, which you can see, and that's used for digging. But oftentimes some people confuse these with a domestic cat, but they have 4 toes and they always retract their nails, as do bobcats. So the porcupine, the bottom here, you often can see the tail drag. They have unique soles that are pebbly textured, which you can see on substrata like mud or snow. This helps the porcupine grip trees to climb. The front paws have 4 claws and a little thumb, and their back paws have 5 claws. Their tracks are approximately 3 inches in length, and the toes are curved in, sort of pigeon-toed. They have a distinctive gait. They totter from side to side as they move, quite funny, really. And their short legs and chubby bodies keep them low to the ground as they slowly meander. So that's pretty much it. And I'll be happy to answer questions. Let me come back. I got to find you, and hold on. It takes me a second to.
Okay. Well, that was wonderful, Jenny. I learned a lot of things. I didn't know about all these animals.
That's what I said. These are kind of cool, little critters.
Really, really. Well, we do have some questions in the chat box. And I'm going to start with the first person who asked his question, and then I'll come back to some of the others. Okay, this is from an anonymous attendee, and he would like to know, or she, I would love to hear about Connecticut law related to trapping and releasing opossums. I wondered about making a deal with a trapper to release any possums they catch on our large acreage of woodlands.
Okay, is that, if that's your own private property, then a trapper can't trap there without your permission. So, if if you ask a trapper to trap, they're probably not using a have a heart trap. So, you know, I think that most animals that are caught by trappers, the state is not allowed to have them give them up. You know what I'm saying? We used to trap beavers and release them elsewhere, but I'm really not real up on that, I have to say. And you would have to look at there is a trapping guide you can get at the DEP website, but because of that question, I will check that out so that I'll be more informed on it. But if you do have animals that you want to trap, I would encourage you to use a have a heart trap, and you can Google, you know, what sort of thing attracts the animals. I'm talking little animals. But if you do trap a skunk, you need to cover it with a blanket, the trap, or you might end up having a nice little smell for a while. So sorry, I couldn't completely answer your question, but again, I like to have questions that I can't completely answer, because then I can look up and get the correct answer.
Okay, well, here's one maybe you can answer. I've lived in Bloomfield for a dozen years, adjacent to woods and our farm. I've encountered virtually all native mammals, large and small, but have yet to see a raccoon. Can you tell me why?
Well, I would say, you know, all these animals are opportunistic feeders. So like a raccoon, I could associate very closely with a bear when it comes to artificial food, meaning bird seed, or even a lot of people will feed their chickens and leave the bag out in the pen. I don't know why, but so raccoons, they have found that if they get in a dumpster or underneath a bird feeder, or where there's available garbage, and unfortunately, Connecticut is very fragmented, by road and development. So there's a lot of places where these animals can hang out and get filled up pretty quickly. So that would be my guess. It's pretty educated guess that they just have other, unless you're really feeding or something, they have other places that they found to be, more productive for them.
Okay. So Suzanne wants to know, so does the porcupine have its quills hidden, and what we see are guard hairs that are very thick and white?
No, the guard hairs are really the brown, softer looking things. The quills are the white and dark, and but they lay flat. So sometimes when they are laying flat, they'll be sort of mixed under the guard hairs. But if you see that kind of white and black, that's definitely the porcupine quills.
Okay.
But they're not raised. When they raise them, it's very evident that they're the quills, but they kind of hang just a little under the guard hair, which is the brown.
So when they raise those quills, this is just my question, do they shoot them off at you one at a time? Because you said each one has its own muscles. Or, if an animal or something is close to it, does it project out a lot of quills?
It will. It raises up all of the quills, say if they're going to in the back, they don't shoot them, but as soon as an animal encounters those quills, they'll be stuck in. Okay. So the animal has to actually touch the porcupine and the quills for the quills to come out.
Ah, I see. And how long does it take that animal to pull those quills back out?
Well, as I said, we've done necropsies on some bobcat, and they had quills embedded in them. Somebody said to me one time, what if a porcupine falls out of a tree and gets quilled by itself? Porcupines have this natural antibiotic in their system that protects them against that. Most animals, like the bobcats, usually will survive the quills unless it somehow gets into the nerves, you know what I mean, or the bloodstream. But it's very hard on animals like dogs and stuff, because they tend to go to bite the porcupine, so they'll end up with dozens of quills in their mouth, and that can happen to a wild animal too. And some can survive, but some can get infections. Now, a lot of wild animals are more resistant to infection than we are. Like a bear, like they could have like a huge gash on their side, and never get an infection. So I'm not saying they all will. A small animal would probably have less of a chance if they had really bad quills in them than a bigger animal.
Well, this sort of leads to the next question by Karen, who wants to know, what can we do to support these animals?
Karen, I think the best thing we can do is make sure that we don't have artificial food sources around, because that does make these animals cluster. It makes them cross roads. We're the third most fragmented state by roads in the country. And they do that per capita, you know, for size or whatever. But that's pretty incredible when you think about it. You know, even out in more remote areas, there's always roads that all these animals are having to cross. So, you know, and also I think if we all educate others, you know, drive slower at night, you know, like a moose. Okay, like most animals have eye shine, but you can't see a moose's eye shine because it's too tall. So even one of those jacked up trucks, you know, isn't tall enough for the headlights to hit the moose's eye, and a moose is dark. But even like a little possum, they're not going to be running across the road. They're going to be like, you know, just going really slowly. A porcupine is almost the same color as the roads. But you know what, if you keep your speed to 45 or less, you know, you can usually stop. I mean, I keep my eyes up a little ways in front of me to the side of the road. Now, that's, you know, a deer can dart in a second, you know, some of these animals that run. But, you know, the most things we can do is to just ask people to slow down, ask them to, you know, if they get animals hanging around, maybe get less food out there. The best thing we can do is leave them to their natural food sources.
Okay, very good. Well, Bill and Martha wanted to let you know that they have a skunk that frequently visits them, which has an all-white back. Have you ever seen that before?
I have seen that. Like I said, all of their stripes are like fingerprints. I've seen pictures, but I've not had one. That would be a great picture for me to put with attribution in my talk if you could get it to me.
Well, Bill and Martha, you can write to Jenny in care of WittenberryLandTrust.org, and we can send her information and you guys can hook up. That would be very interesting. And I'm coming down to the last couple of questions. Suzanne wants to know, I used to have opossum under my bird feeders, but have not seen them, but I've only seen them in one in a few years. Are they declining?
You know, we don't, a lot of these, the Fearsome Foursome, we don't have a great sense of their numbers. They could be, but they could just be, you know, hanging out in places we're not seeing them. They are out at night. So if you're in your house early, and don't go back out again, you may not see them crossing the roads or outside. I mean, I always like, you know, game cams are really cheap to buy nowadays, even if you don't use a wireless one, you know, one that would notify you on your phone. It's really a lot of fun. And right now in the winter is a good time because you can really see the animals, and you want to place it like waist high and just put it out there. And if you wait until you see a snow, you can go out and kind of see where the animal activity is. It's just a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of those are under $100 now. And I think it's a lot of fun to see, you know, what's passed through. You know, a lot of people's security cameras, Ring cameras can see stuff not very clearly, but with a game cam, you'd be able to clearly see the animal. Anonymous, I don't, I guess, I don't know whether you could go to them and say, hey, can I have that animal? I don't think that's legal either way. But again, I would have to defer to you looking up regulations on trapping. And again, I thank you for that question because I will get the answer to that.
Oh, good. Okay.
So,
And you know what? Bill and Martha responded, and I see, Jenny, you've already responded, but they're going to send you video and pictures tomorrow. So that's great. And Mary, where do the skunks go to die? I have a family of skunks and they travel the property boundary lines at night. I live in a closely knit urban environment and would have no idea where a skunk's nest or home is found.
You know, Mary, wildlife, I spend a ton of time outside, you know, I'm hiking all the time. If it's too hot and too ticky, I'm paddling. And, you know, seeing wildlife is just such a gift. You know, we probably see more of what we call the charismatic megafauna, which would be your black bears, mostly because we have food out. You know, we see squirrels, obviously chipmunks, other things. But again, a skunk is a very reticent animal. It comes out mostly at night. It's hard to ever know where the nests are of things. I mean, if you're an experienced tracker, you can pretty much find it. I'm trying very hard to become an experienced tracker, but it's very hard because I was taking a tracking exam and they showed us 5 acorns and they said, what chewed this? And so like mice, flying squirrels, deer, all these animals make a different hole in the acorn. You know, they chew it differently. So there's a lot to learn. So, you know, all I can say is during the day, they like to rest kind of up on a bulk of something. But, you know, they also don't like to be seen if they're resting. So they're going to probably be, you know, kind of hunkered away, just like screech owls. I mean, you might have walked by a tree with a hole in it, you know, for years, and there might be a screech owl right in that little, you know, that little hole. So you can be certain while you're walking out and about that a lot of critters are seeing you that you're not seeing. So it's pretty, the best thing is to educate you on what kind of nest all these animals have, and then you'll kind of know what to look for. A lot of animals do take up homes in brush piles, even bears, you know, where there's a lot of, you know, dead limbs and everything.
Well, Jenny, thank you.